afternoon. And let me get the desktop audio up, even though I do play background music when I do these streams, but I've been forgetting to do that when I switch to the main scene mode when I've been doing my gaming streams. And I forget. Fortunately, my son has always been reminding me, but I got to get into the habit of remembering because I can't just rely upon one person doing that for me. Anyway, I wanted to start doing some random code streams again, just fixing some bugs. I found a couple in Rocks, and the way I find these is just kind of random. I notice there are new packages that people have created, and I'm like, oh, I just add them to, if you look here in, where is this? Code generation tests. I have this huge list of NuGet packages that I've referenced. And so this app basically goes through, tries to find types that it could mock, generates some mocks for them, and sees if it can compile. It doesn't try to actually run the mocking code, just compile it. And that in and of itself has found a lot of bugs. It sounds bad. A lot of bugs. It's like it's not meant to be like, oh, we have a really unstable library. That's not what I'm trying to say here. It's just there's cases that I just don't think of. And new libraries or existing libraries, when they're updated, change things. And then I'm like, oh, I didn't even consider something like that. So I found a couple of those, and I want to go through and try to solve them and fix them. So let's get some shuffle off. Yes, play. Some background music going. So the first one is called events are not handled in shim types. So what I call shim types in Rocks are basically these types that I create whenever you have default interface members in play, like you have here. So if you don't actually implement this method, you would expect that it falls back to calling this, and that's not quite the way it works. So the long story short is, like, if I see that there are default interface members, I create these shim types, and then I will call an implementation of that. So it effectively ends up calling the base interface version of it. So I wish I didn't have to do that. There's actually, I think, an issue in C# to allow you to call the base effectively of the default interface implementation and make it easier. But I figured out a way to do this in Rocks. The problem is that there's a case where there's an event on a type and the actual shim type doesn't have to have these events declared. They should. It's not that I'm going to call them. In fact, I won't, but they still need to be declared on the type. Now, one thing I've also done that I thought of is with events, you can actually do an add and a remove. And what happens if you do that on an interface type? And what happens if that was called on the actual implementation? I am not even going to try to cover that case right now, because one thing I think events have become kind of, I don't want to say lacking. This is actually on Microsoft Fluent UI. And that's typically where you might find events, is on UI components. But I have honestly not declared an event in a long time in my C# code. I just don't do that much anymore. And by that I mean never. So with that in play, anyway, what I think I just need to do is the events are generated for the actual mock type. So I just got to find that code and say for the shim type, do the same thing. So hopefully this will be a quick fix, but I say that in the past and quick fixes never happen. So let's go. I already have a branch made. So let's have that test here. And we're going to have, this should just be generate. Because there's a create and a make. That's what I'm doing all the time now on Rocks. So I'm like, I don't know why it did that. So we're going to say generate when events exist. And we'll grab this test code. That's what I'm always doing for the bugs, is I always try to find a test, at least to show that the bug exists, and then I'll write up the bug this way. And so then I just already have the code here, and I don't have to think about, you know, creating a test. Why did that not? Anyway, whatever. So we're going to have this code here. And this one is going to be called that and that. We need that because we need two strings that we're going to compare to make sure the code is generated correctly. Technically for this, that's probably why I said create, because I don't think this matters with makes, but we'll make sure it works in both cases. So let's run this. Line contains different white space. Oh, for God's sakes. I hate... There. Whatever. It didn't like the copy-paste spacing that ended up there. And I should be able... Nope, not that. Because I think it's all... Oh. No. ET. There we go. Let's hide those. No, that. Oh. This is some necessary surgery that I have to do. Okay. Grab that. Get the make. What is the problem here? Oh, I have too much space at the end. That's the one problem with this library that I use to test stuff, is that it's really picky in terms of where the resultant string is, which makes sense. I get it. You want it to be correct, you know, but it's a little too picky. But what else is it going to do? It's just looking to say, does the code that you generate match what you expected? You know. All right. Nope, not that. Okay, now we should see the issue, right? Yes, we do. Okay, and so where I want to fix this, I believe, I looked at the builders, is we want to have something like this, shim event builder, which we don't have. So we're going to take the property one and we're going to make that shim event builder. And what we want to do here is say events. And we don't care. Oh, we got to put that there. Okay. I know I do this. Do I want to do this? We should have somewhere in here where we're saying, yeah, events builder. I almost want to just copy pasta this. Because it's almost the exact same thing, except I don't need this. And I believe that's actually what I've done between these two, is that if you look at them, they're almost exactly the same. I mean, not this events builder here and there. And so you know what? Part of me says this is wrong, but part of me says it's so right though. Okay. We'll put that here and here. Okay. So now we should be handling it correctly. If I come here and I run this, what is shim type? Oh, I'm just passing that in? That's interesting. Why do I mean, I can do this. We can go here and we can say type mock model. And then what do I call it when I pass it in here? Shim type. Works for me. And so then here we would say events. There. Now if we go to our generator, whoops, generator test, and we say run, it should fail, but it's going to fail because we've added in a little bit extra. So all the way down in the shim type that's created. Yep. So this is right at the constructor point. Right. Where is it? There it is. Okay. Sorry. It took me a moment. Where did it put it? Jesus. So it puts it right after the constructor. Okay. That's fine. I mean, it doesn't have to look neat. It just has to be correct. There. Okay, so it does not leave a line there. I do not like this, though. I have to admit, I don't. I would like a little bit of space there. So if length is greater than 0, then let's do this. Right line. And so now that should match what we have in the test here. And if I run this, it still fails. Oh, that's disappointing. Oh, God, I have too much. There. Yeah, I got too much there. Okay. Hey, now let's come to our code generation tests, because I can do this with a particular type. And what I want to do it on is, that's why I always put the type in here where I found it. Nope, 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 nope. There. And so let's run this. And let's see if that fixed it. And it did. I think that's what happened when I did that, because I have test with type. I ran that. Okay, so I'm going to say test with types and just say run everything. You will see some errors here because I've got 2 other bugs I need to fix. But what I want to do quick is make sure that this didn't break anything with all the types that are currently running. So this takes about a minute or 2. So I'll just let this run and we'll see what this does. I've been thinking a couple things that come to mind. One is actually, it's not easy to see here, but I'm using a solution X file now. So again, you can't see it because the name it doesn't show up here. I'd actually like to see Visual Studio tooling allow you to edit this just like you can edit a C# file. That would be really nice, just to be consistent. You can hit that and it lets you edit it. But file's smaller, it reads better, reads so much better than the SLN format. So it's now supported from an SDK standpoint. From Visual Studio, it's still considered a preview feature, but it's gonna have, you know, where it's just supported out of the box. You don't have to turn it on as a preview feature. And I think Rider has it already as a preview. I'm not sure. I don't use Rider, but I heard that they're working on it, which makes sense because it's an official feature. So it's something that has to work. So I'm glad. I'm glad that they finally are moving away from solution formats, though I see it work. I still see people that use the old style when you're doing especially older .NET Framework projects. That old style, and oh God, that just stinks. That's so awful when you have to run into a project that uses that, because it's just not as friendly to use. I'm so used to editing project files just as a convention of habit, for lack of a better phrase. And then when I can't do that, it's like, ugh, bleh. It's just not a good feeling. So that's one thing. One other thing is I was thinking about looking at some of the other mocking frameworks that are out there and looking at what bugs they have, because those bugs may be ones that, even though it's a different framework, may be something that I haven't considered in mind with Rocks. And, you know, I have just a couple of general goals with Rocks. One of them is that this is always educational, because new language features always seem to cause something to go wrong with Rocks, you know, either in a minor or a major way. And I got to handle it. So that's been very educational for me. It's also, I just like maintaining this library, and I do take a little bit of a sense of pride in that it is very fast. You know, the benchmark mocknet tests have shown, and I know I keep bringing this up, but I like bringing it up because, yeah, I actually updated them near the end of the year for 9, and it's still the fastest, and it still consumes the least amount of memory, which, again, it's a mocking framework. It's not like it's something that a lot of people use, and I'd even argue that your default convention should be not to use a mocking framework, but when you do, they're nice. And I kind of like that the one that I've written is very fast, very small in terms of allocations, and I want to keep it that way. So that's another reason why I keep maintaining it. All right, so we're getting near the end of this one. I can tell because we're at the S's. When you get near the end of the test, you're hitting the end of the alphabet. So if this is fixed, and that's a big if, because I have made bug fixes that have inadvertently caused problems in other areas, and then that's why I have all these tests in place. Because one little change that I make, I've seen it before, it suddenly affects something that I didn't expect. So, and then I should run the integration tests and the unit tests just to make sure I didn't break anything there either. So we should see some errors. They will come from the dynamic data. Those are the other two bugs, and those are 20 dynamic data. As long as it's just dynamic data. Oh, and the caller member attribute. Yeah, that's a dynamic data as well. Yeah, so those are the new ones. That's okay. I'm fine with that. So let's reload. I don't like it that it doesn't show up in the list here. It does show up here, and it doesn't have an icon either. That's something else they got to update. But let's just run all the unit and integration tests, which I should have done first, but whatever. So, assuming that this all runs, then we can merge this in and get to another bug. I figured this, out of the three, this was the most simple, because I felt like all I had to do is just declare those events in this type that's private. Nobody else would call them, so it really shouldn't have interfered with anything else. And if it fixes it, it fixes it. Then there's one that I think is maybe a little bit harder to do, but hopefully not that bad. And then the third one is going to be, I think, quite fun. We'll see. All right, those all passed. So let's just commit this. 349 added events to shim, tests pass, merge, or time frame merge. All right, let's quickly do the branches so that all this stuff merges in. Yep. And push that. All right, delete that. And if for like work that I do, both where I work full time and if I'm working somebody else's repos, I typically will do branch, PR merge, that type of thing, especially work. With this, I'm typically the only one that does the work on this stuff, so I'll at least make a branch, but then I'm okay with just merging it in like that for good, bad, or indifferent. All right, so let's close that. Oh, wait, no, one crap. That's fine. I'll close this. But what I wanted to do, and I forgot, is update the changelog. So we want to have this will be, it can technically be a 902, but I'm going to make this a point release. So we fixed events and interfaces that contain members with default implementations are now handled correctly in shim types. And that was what? 349. There. Okay. And so let's just forgot to update change log. Okay, now that's done. So we got one done. The second one is the one I'm going to tackle here. And then I'll quickly talk about what the third one is. And then we'll try to get to see how far we get with this one. So this one is if you have a method, let me zoom in on this a little bit. You have a method that uses caller member name. I'm assuming it'd be all the other caller attributes, but this one's fine. And it has a default value like it should. And in fact, it's required to. But what's happening here is I create these handler classes. And because this is a ref, I can't just use, at least I can't use, this is something I should look at right now. You can't use like refer out on delegate definitions, or on, I should say, func in action. You can't just say I want a ref there. That does not work. So what I do is I declare a delegate with that, but what I'm forgetting in the case of the delegates there is that if there is a parameter that has one of these caller attributes on it, it needs to pick up the default value that's been put here. Like you could put nothing there as the default value. Typically though, you'll put null. Actually, I've never tried to put a value there if you don't pass in a value explicitly, because the whole point is the compiler is going to fill in the value for who is the caller at compile time. And so that's why you get an accurate name for it, because you have to worry about stack frames disappearing if the jitter is determining that something can be inlined and that you actually don't have the thing above you is what you thought was calling you. So in any event, the problem is that when this is generated in those handlers, it doesn't include the default. So that's something we have to do. All right, so we're going to make a new branch, and by my convention, I usually just take this and then reverse it, stripping out things like that. And then I already have a test. And where do we want to put this test? What generator do we want to use? Attribute generator test sounds as good as any. So we'll create a test. Public static async task generate with ref parameter and caller attribute async. Sure. Sounds as good as anything. Crap, really? Come on. There. All right. So then let's grab that. We're going to call this caller, so it's going to have the name of that. And then we need these two variables, and then we're going to have to generate it twice to get the generated code. All right, let's get what the code looks like when it's... Of course you would, because why would you want to be friendly at all? Ah, crap. Build type. Make. All right, there we go. So now, oh, we have an open test log. It's that big. One, two, three, four. The reason I put 4 double quotes there is because in the test code, there's an exception that's made from a string as the message. And because of that, does it remember? No, it does. Shoot. There is actually a raw string within this generated code. Like you can see it right there. And so my raw string for the code has to be 4 double quotes, but it works. And that's what I like about the raw string literals is you can always win. You can always just add another quote or another ampersand to handle any escaping that you need, and it just works. So, which is nice. Okay, this is the make. There we go. All right, now this should fail because if we look at why it's failing, it should be because right here we put the attribute on, but we don't put equals null. Default values. Now, I don't remember default values generator. So like in something like this, what do? We don't put in these because it doesn't. We can use a system func here, which is interesting. So in this case, we don't do that, but when we actually come to the initial value here, yes, we actually say default, which is kind of interesting, but kind of makes sense. Positive infinity. Yeah, and again, that one we don't, but we make sure it is stated here. We do need it. This, I think, is the first time I've run into the case where we just need to make sure that it's actually put on the delegate that's created. So where do we actually do that? Delegate builder. So delegate builder is when we just need to use a func or an action, and we can go the easy route. But if I look where I'm making the handler list, and then here is where I have to do a little bit more. Yes. Because we say handler, whatever the number is, the type arguments, callback for handler. Now, if that's true, we should also be looking for that method parameter or. So here we get the projected delegate. This is the callback for handler. So this makes sense. This here, though, is where we need to make sure that we have the default values being set with the parameter, which we don't do, but I know we're doing it. So we get the default value. So I think this is just make the explicit default value accept that. Okay. And then that goes right next to name here. So I think that's it. So now if we go to our test here that we generated, we should see here equals null. And we do, and it passes. Okay, so let's go through the whole rigmarole again. I'm going to run all unit tests and integration tests. Then we're going to run the test for that one type that it was found on and make sure it fixes it. And then we're going to run them for all the code generated types. And if that works, then this is fixed. So that actually hopefully should be a pretty quick one. Because even though this is only for, like, it came up with caller member name attribute, I really want to make sure that we include the default value here for all the delegate types that we create, just because that's what it should be. It should match that. So I don't think it will be any harm foul, but again, this is why I have all these tests in place. One failed because sometimes things fail that I don't expect them to. Open generics. Generate with nullable reference and return. Oh, did this just change? So if we look at this, because of that, okay, and then so we just now put in here equals null, but that passes. That's okay. It doesn't break anything. And so all the other tests passed. Okay, cool. So let's go into my issue here. And we found it on this type. So let's go into the code generation project and test that one type. Come on. Let's not test with all types. Let's test with type, go to definition, and make sure that we have that one as our target. Does that run? And it does. Okay, so now we can run them against all and take the couple of minutes to run them. By the way, if you're new to the channel and you haven't subscribed yet, please do so. I'm trying to get to 1,000 subscribers as my first goal, so getting close, almost near 900, but any new subscription helps, so thank you in advance for that. While this is running, let me go through the third one and just explain what that is. I don't know if I'm going to actually do any work on that right now, but I want to at least explain what this is. This is interesting. At least I find it interesting. Is we have a base type here that has two type parameters, generic values, generic parameters. And it has a method that takes an IEnumerable of T key, the second one, okay? And then source updater derives from cache updater, and it creates a refresh method that uses IEnumerable of T object. Those are two different methods because those are two different types. And that's confusing rocks. It doesn't implement the one on the base type. It thinks it's the same, and so it doesn't create one. And so that was found in this new dynamic data NuGet package that I've added into rocks. And I'm like, I never even thought of somebody doing that. And yet it's perfectly valid. There's absolutely no reason that you can't do that. I don't know if they call it keys and values. The name of the parameter doesn't come in with signatures and overloading, but I do think that they actually end up calling it on the derived type because it's not its values. It's not, well, no, the base type is actually technically, see, it's an object in this key. They call this keys, but maybe they call us objects. Again, the name doesn't matter, but I am curious to see what they call it. Now, when this all finishes, we should still see errors, but the only errors that we should see are the ones that are related to this bug. That's the hope. And since that's running, we can go into here and just say, well, that is the next one we're going to tackle. So if we look at refresh, it says items. Okay, you know what? Let's just edit this. Just be consistent. My code examples don't use the full definition of these types where I found the errors, but it's basically condensed down from where I found it. So we'll just say refresh items. Entity framework always takes forever. There's so much in there, not only that it can create a mock type for, but it's also just a large library. So it just takes time. That quantum library, that's interesting because Microsoft just announced like a week or two ago that they finally have their quantum chip, I don't want to say ready for purchase, but they've made, I guess for lack of a better term, significant progress on it. And something that they've been working on apparently in research for 17 years has finally paid off because their approach is easier to fabricate, easier being a relative term, but easier to fabricate, easier to scale. And so it seems like it's a much better option than what other companies have been working on with quantum computing. So we'll see. Remains to be seen. I'm old enough to realize that everything that gets hyped has a hype cycle. So it's always worth looking at the details and not just what is reported in the press. You know. So, but if it does pan out, if it is as promising as it says it is, that would be cool. That would be interesting. Don't know if it would make our graphics cards faster and quieter, but you know, you never know. I don't know if it also requires like super cooling to work. I'm not sure about that. I honestly did not read the details on it. So, but Microsoft created this language called Q#. That was years ago. And I kind of think that's tied in with the work that they were doing with quantum hardware. All right, we're down to 16. And I think all of these have to do with the cache updater. So yes, we did fix this. Okay, so that's cool. So this one is now fixed. Let me just quickly, let's save. And let me just make sure that I have updated the change log. So I can now say methods with ref or out and as parameters with default values are now generated correctly. Handlers for methods with referout parameters and parameters with default values are now generated correctly. And if you always want the details, you can go to 350 and see what happened. There. Okay, I'm going to commit this. Let's just commit it right now. 350 added default value to delegate Time for your merge. There. All right. So I'm going to merge this in to main, and then in the next random code stream, which I might do Saturday morning or Sunday morning, one or the other, or both, we'll see, is to handle this one. This one, again, I think is going to be a bear because it's trying to figure out that this one and this one, that they are not the same. I don't know why I'm currently considering them to be the same, but I think I'm just looking at, oh, it's IEnumerable of generic, and I don't actually look at the type parameters. But we'll figure that out. So that's the next one I'm going to work on. But for this stream, I fixed 2 bugs, and I don't feel too bad about that. I think that's good progress. So if you've been watching either live or you watch this later on, I appreciate it either way. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please subscribe. I would also greatly appreciate that as well, as I'm trying to get to that first goal of 1,000 subscribers. So please subscribe if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet. And with that, I am done with this stream. Thank you all for watching. Take care, and I hope to see you in the future.